Welcome to the show. It is Tuesday. As always, great to have you with us here today. I'm Sean Stiers, joined by Jesse Stiers, and we roll into the first. I guess Notre Dame had 2 bye weeks, so that this season. So it's not the first time we haven't had Notre Dame football, but this will be the first of at least a handful of weeks before Notre Dame plays again after coming to the conclusion of the regular season. We've got other football to watch this weekend, all the conference championship games, the spoils of being an independent, as everyone likes to tell Notre Dame and Notre Dame fans. But, that's it is what it is. And, Jesse, some interesting news that I think that we should go ahead and lead off this show with, because it very well is likely to have at least some impact on tonight's college football playoff rankings release, as we speak, of course, on Tuesday, for anyone who might be listening to the podcast version of this show the day after. But Lane Kiffin, the new head coach at LSU, announced that his offensive coordinator, Charlie Weis Jr., who is following him from Ole Miss to LSU, and by some accounts at least was like the other members of the offensive staff had to, was basically either you're in or you're out. Either you're on the plane with me now or you're not coming to LSU. So Charlie gets on the plane, goes to LSU. Lane Kiffin announced today that he is going to let Charlie Weis Jr. remain offensive coordinator at Ole Miss during the Rebels college football playoff run, however long that lasts. And he made the announcement specifically earlier today because of tonight's rankings. And Vince and I were talking on yesterday's show about how the absence of not just Lane Kiffin, but the offensive staff could impact Ole Miss in the rankings. I think at the very least, without the offensive staff and without your offensive coordinator and, of course, your head coach, but, without whoever, I think that there was at least a chance that Ole Miss would have been passed by Oklahoma when the rankings come out, if not maybe even Notre Dame as well. I think it could have cost them a spot or two in the rankings. So what do you think about this move by Lane Kiffin to let old Charlie Jr. stay at Ole Miss and remain offensive coordinator during the playoffs?
This is a very loaded question, first and foremost.
I know where you want to take it. Start off with the rankings thing, and then you can go into what you really want to go into after that.
I think there's a lot of layers to it. So the first part of it, we can talk about, the rankings. I think that getting your offensive coordinator back at the very least, I think gets you maybe a spot or two back. And I think ranking-wise, this possibly eliminates Notre Dame hosting a playoff game, because if they could crawl up just one more spot to that 8 spot, they would be hosting a playoff game. And so if you're a Notre Dame fan, that's what you wanted. You wanted Lane Kiffin to go. You wanted him to gut everyone, because it's not the same coaching staff that would be going into a college football playoff. I think at least some of that is given back in favor of Ole Miss. I think, like you were saying, potentially Oklahoma could jump, but I don't know if I can see Notre Dame jumping now because of who Lane Kiffin is as a coach. Like, this is a big deal because Lane Kiffin is the offensive guru. That's what he's always been. And Charlie Weis Jr. has all the secrets to the trades of what Lane Kiffin tries to do, right? So I think this is a big deal for that reason. Ole Miss is getting back. Their most potent thing that they do is their offense. And they're getting back their offensive coordinator after their head coach being taken away. So I think this is a pretty large deal. And I think this is Lane Kiffin trying to make a statement of, he's kind of trying to one-up him, it feels like.
Trying to offer at least some kind of olive branch, if not maybe, his own unique kind of Lane Kiffin snark because of the fact that he was not allowed to remain at Ole Miss and coach the team throughout the playoffs and all that kind of stuff. It's going to be interesting, though, still losing your head coach as you're getting ready for a playoff run, even if Charlie Weis Jr. gets to stay. I still think it could cost him maybe a spot in the rankings tonight. Again, like without both Kiffin and the offensive staff, I think that was even a greater shot. Like I said, was it definite that both Oklahoma and Notre Dame were going to pass Ole Miss? No, we'll never know now because Charlie Weis Jr. But if there's any movement at all, even like if Oklahoma bumps up a spot past Ole Miss, and now all of a sudden Ole Miss is in the 8th position. Notre Dame remains number 9, and so now Notre Dame is going to Ole Miss instead of Oklahoma. I mean, that there's at least some ripple there, and there's going to be some impact. And I do think that still not having Lane Kiffin is going to have some impact as well, because he is still, like, he's obviously the head coach, but he's also really the offensive mastermind of this whole thing. And you're going to have a completely unproven, you're promoting your defensive coordinator to head coach. It's really the same situation in so many ways as Brian Kelly going to LSU and Marcus Freeman taking over for the bowl game. That bowl game was obviously less significant, even though it was still the Fiesta Bowl. It was not a playoff game. So in terms of, importance, it wasn't at the level of a college football playoff game. But you've got an unproven head coach who's going to be leading your team in Golding, their defensive coordinator. So there's still some unknown. You're going into the playoffs with an unproven head coach.
Yeah, I agree. I think it completely changes things. It is no small task to become a head coach for the first time, especially at the level like Ole Miss, and then have to be a head coach in your first game within the playoffs, right? Like, that is, you don't know what you're doing until you're in the moment doing it, right? And there's no perfect script to being a head coach. No game goes away. Things come throughout the game of situational football. So I don't think that they can be coached the same way. And I think that's why, like you were saying, it's just not the same team. And so how far they drop, I think, is one of the bigger talking points for the rankings that are going to come out tonight.
Yeah, so DJ is asking if Ole Miss has confirmed this. I'm looking at the story on ESPN right now, and he will be allowed to return to this is according to Adam Rittenberg's story on ESPN. Will be allowed to return. Weiss, who has been the Rebels offense. So there's a quote from Kiffin. Ole Miss confirmed Weiss's return, listing him alongside Golding quarterbacks coach Joe Judge and 6 other assistants for the college football playoff staff. So yes, Ole Miss has confirmed that Charlie Weiss will remain with the team. So very interesting, and we'll see what kind of impact that has now, again, on these rankings as they come out tonight. We've got some more Lane Kiffin stuff in rapid fire. We've got a lot of this. Like, as always, it's just a loaded show is what it is.
There's a good amount of content. I looked at this and I was like, oh my gosh, I better make sure I know just about everything for today.
That's right. Tuesday is Shamrock Up, Shamrock Down, our weekly stock check of Notre Dame football. And we've got some comments that I think are going to that do play into the Shamrock Up, Shamrock Down from Marcus Freeman, specific to some of the stuff that we're going to talk about on Shamrock Up, Shamrock Down today. Let me just lob this one at you. Unlike Vince, who apparently was re-nourishing and going to the bathroom at halftime of the Lions-Packers game on Thanksgiving Day, you watched the Jack White Eminem halftime show on Thanksgiving. Shamrock Up, Shamrock Down to that performance.
That was a big Shamrock Up for me. I thought it was kind of the perfect mix of what I would say, your type of generation music. And the reason I say that is because you asked me before the game, you're like, do you know who this is? And I was like, yeah. And then you started naming some songs. I was like, okay, I definitely know who this is. And then you have, more of that kind of early 2000s modern Eminem. I thought it was really short, concise, good mix. And one of my good friends who's a Lions fan said that was one of the better halftime shows he's ever seen, and he's seen just about all of them. So I know it has to be good.
And look, I'm not going to try to claim like I'm this big Jack White, White Stripes fan. I know a few of the songs. Obviously, Seven Nation Army is probably the most popular. He's also got that there's like a little ditty that you hear like in different movies and stuff. It'll come up. It's like, I can tell that we are going to be friends. Have you ever heard that one? Like, da-da-da. Da, da, da.
Oh, yes.
I think it might have been in Juno or something. They might have used it or something like, and in some other movies, that kind of stuff. Interesting, though, I went to Apple Music today, and they actually they've got the halftime performance from that game, like the 3-song set, 3.5, 4-song set. They've got it up at Apple Music, so you can actually listen to that live, and I purchased it for today. You could get the whole thing for like $3. I'm like, what the heck? I might as well. And it's like really good quality sound. Kudos to them for putting it up, because there's like a lot of live stuff that I hear that I wish that you could go and find, like on Apple Music and stuff like that. It's pretty cool. I think that they've got it, and they put it right up, and just makes sense, I think, for everybody. Get a little cash out of the whole deal.
I didn't realize you were such a live music fanatic.
DJ says, I have no idea who that is. See, and this is the funniest part about this whole, like, I asked Vince about, the halftime performance last night, and he gave me his excuses about why he couldn't listen. But then he also made, the comment about, well, I guess, it's a loosely defined, however you define music or whatever. I was born in the 1960s. Vince was born in the 1980s. And sometimes I feel like Vince is going to the sock hop with like some of his music choices. Like that feels like Vince. Show tunes and 50, like Beatles and 50s Elvis is like Vince, and he is younger than I. Let's put it that way.
I mean, this is coming from the guy who didn't even know the Bears were playing on Friday. So
I'm glad you called him out. I didn't even call him out on that last night. I should have. But so let's start with a shamrock down for me. All the noise around Notre Dame's college football playoff rankings, it just continues. It's my shamrock down to start the show. I know all these Miami fans and BYU fans and everyone else and Texas fans, they're all making their case, and it just feels like it's going to get louder again tonight in what will be the final pre-rankings rankings. These are the last rankings before the final rankings come out next Sunday, and they're going to be very important because obviously based on what happens in those conference championship games, where you are right now, especially like if you're Notre Dame and your only path, or Ole Miss even, or, like any team not playing in a conference championship game, your only path is to get an at-large spot. So where you show up in tonight rankings is going to be hugely important, but I'm just tired of all the noise that's come along with it. It's like, you expand the field to 12 and it's only year 2 of an expanded field, and there's just more noise now than ever. And I guess it's just because you're giving more teams opportunities. You're giving 8 more teams opportunities. So you've basically got double that amount of fan bases who are whining and complaining and everything else about every little thing. What do you think?
Yeah, this has to be the biggest shamrock down for me as well. It seems like anything that you're watching football related on ESPN comes down to this. Like, I remember, so many games over the weekend where the announcers decided they had an input on it, an opinion. And then you go on social media and everyone's got an opinion. And then all of a sudden the Big 12 commissioner is doing an on-field interview just taking jabs at Notre Dame. And then Sarkisian, post-game interview, taking jabs at Notre Dame. So it's just like, I don't understand how Notre Dame has just become this overall punching bag when you can make gripes about other teams. Like Oklahoma's offense looked absolutely putrid over the weekend.
Awful.
How is that? You're telling me that is a college football playoff offense? And then you flip on Notre Dame, and they could have ran that score up to 70 if they wanted to. They put the brakes on after going up 42-0 to start the second, or to begin the third quarter. So it's like, what are we talking about right now? SMU beat Miami. Stanford beat Cal. And then now Miami's trying to talk like they deserve to jump everyone. Be in the conference championship this weekend. At least be in third, fourth place of your conference. Like, you have bad losses. I don't know what you want me to say. And so I just think a lot of people, for some reason, feel like Notre Dame is that one where they can just single out and be like, yeah, that's who we want to be our punching bag right now.
I mean, Brett Yormark is out here trying to make us think that Utah, not only BYU, but Utah is, should be getting some kind of college football playoff contention. The same Utah team that gave up a combined 700 rushing yards in back-to-back weeks to the 2 teams from Kansas. Give me a break. Like, we watched parts of that Kansas-Utah game as we were flipping back and forth between Pitt and Miami on what day was that? Saturday. It all blended together with like
Friday. Kansas-Utah was Friday.
Was it Friday? I guess it was Friday. So it wasn't during the Pitt-Miami game. Whichever game we were flipping around, but like Kansas was in that game. They had if they don't make a couple stupid mistakes, Jalen Daniels, they should have won that game. Utah.
Well, that's back-to-back weeks. Kansas and Kansas State should have beaten Utah. Kansas State took them to overtime. And like we were talking about, that's a defense that's given up nearly 300 rushing yards per game. What do you think would happen if they met Notre Dame's rushing attack?
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that Notre Dame actually has a good run defense, throw that in there as well. Another Shamrock down, I think, has to go to Stanford linebacker Wilfredo Ibar for his knee to Jeremiyah Love's ribs. We haven't really had a chance to talk about this because we didn't watch this game together. What do you think? Do you think it was intentional? Do you think he intentionally did this? I feel like it doesn't look blatant, but I just feel like if he came down hard enough to bruise Jeremiyah Love's ribs,
that was full body weight.
That badly, yeah. He put his whole body weight on Jeremiyah. I think it was intentional. I know a lot of other people think so as well.
So I saw the close-up clip today where you could see it from behind and I think from the side. It's so hard because when I look through it, through the Notre Dame fan lens and I was so geared up to watch Jeremiyah Love have a Heisman moment that game and seal his Heisman. And so that really, frustrated me. I feel like while it wasn't a pro wrestling move, just like knee to the rib cage, like you would see on like WWE or all these other different wrestling leagues they have now. But I think he was going for the tackle. He was a part of the scrum. And I don't think he did anything to not land on Jeremiyah Love, I think is the best way to put it. I think his body was taking him forward. He saw the tackle was made. And rather than kind of, peel up and just kind of not be a part of the play, he kind of, like I said, fell into the tackle, and next thing you know, his knee is just jammed in Jeremiyah Love's ribs. Again, I don't think it was like a intentional professional move, but I do think that
didn't do anything intentional. But once he was there, it's like I might as well just get in a little bit of this. Well, it was like a pro wrestling kind of move.
Yeah,
not quite coming high off the top ropes, but there was enough.
Well, then you compile that with the targeting call, and the guys are kind of laughing afterwards. It's like, all right, well, I get it. You guys don't have anything to play for, but some teams and some players do.
It's pretty rough, though. I've always had a pretty good amount of respect for Frank Reich, as at least a football guy and a football lifer, and as a person, really, as well. But to see some of that kind of stuff out of Stanford in that game, it was pretty disappointing. I have to say for a Frank Reich coach team, for what he did this year.
Yeah, I guess it didn't really have to go to that level.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have any other Shamrock downs?
I might. Let me see here. I want to save it because it ties into some of the audio that we have coming up.
Okay, all right.
I don't want to spoil anything.
So we're going to go up and down at the same time is what you're saying when it plays some of these kids. Is that it?
Correct. I think my biggest Shamrock down would be kind of what I was getting into there a little bit about Jeremiyah Love. I wanted him to not only end the season, for the fans and everything, but for himself. That's such a huge personal. It's the most individual award you can win in college football. If you ask him about it, he would say it's all about everyone else. He's a very, humble person. But to see, because the game plan was very obvious. They fed him that first drive, and I think they were going to continue to do so.
I do too.
And let him break the single season rushing record. He tied the touchdown record, I'm pretty sure.
Yep.
I think they wanted him to shatter all the records, get out of there, seal his Heisman kind of train here to end the season.
Get his highlighter too and get out. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was a big Shamrock down to see all of that come to an end. And see Notre Dame potentially. I think there's still a chance to win a Heisman, but it's just not as good, and it's not how you'd want to end the season. So that in itself is a Shamrock down for me.
Not nearly as good. Yeah. So it's not that Jeremiyah loves Shamrock down. It's just the disappointment of not getting. That's the Shamrock down of not being able to see him. Reach full.
Well, and we knew it was going to be a crappy game. It was started at 10:30.
That's literally one of the things we had to look forward to is seeing what kind of performance Love could could pull off, and it took the gloss off of that.
And he's out in the first quarter. They're freaking up, however many points at halftime. And I'm like, why am I even up anymore? There's nothing left in this.
Exactly. Robert McCall says, what does Jesse know about intentional? He gets his car stolen out of his own driveway.
That's harsh.
Man.
That's a clip it moment right there.
Robert McCall paying attention to the show. Again, this could be a new candidate for the artist formerly known as DK. I don't know. All right, Shamrock up, Shamrock down. We're going to take a timeout. We've got a lot of ups. We're going to hear Marcus Freeman's comments on Aneyas Williams, the fake punt, and some other stuff as well. Along with Jesse Stiers, I'm Sean Stiers. Tuesday edition of Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com continues. I'm Sean Stiers, along with Jesse Stiers. An eventful day. We talked about Lane Kiffin letting Charlie Weiss Jr. allowing, however you want to put it, stay at Ole Miss to coach throughout the college football playoffs at the top of the show, and we'll get into some more Lane Kiffin conversation in rapid fire in the 6 o'clock hour of the show tonight. But it's Shamrock Up, Shamrock Down day. And Jesse, I think people have tended to be, I don't know, let's see if you agree with this, more neutral to maybe slightly down on Marty Biagi, special teams coordinator this season, primarily because of the place kicking issues. As we are Shamrock Up, Shamrock Down, where are you on Marty Biagi right now?
Overall, I'm Shamrock Up on Marty Biagi. I think that if you take in the full lens of the season, of what you can control, I think that they've done a good job of blocking punts. They've done a good job on some of these fake punts. They've done a good job with James Rendell in the punting game, flipping the field. I think they've won a lot of field position through punting. I think the kicking has gotten better despite the shaky start. And then we all know what the field goal kicking is. But I was thinking about this the other day. They kept bringing up in that Stanford game, they haven't kicked a field goal since October 10th. And it's like, well, if you think about it,
they haven't attempted that many field goals in that stretch either.
It's kind of a impressive nod to Notre Dame because why kick field goals when you keep scoring touchdowns?
Yeah.
You're beating someone 7-0 and you didn't have to kick one field goal, I'll take that. I don't think anyone's complaining about touchdowns.
Would you have wanted to see them put Eric Schmidt out there and maybe at least attempt a field goal, in a game situation before the season was over?
Yeah, but say that goes awful. Does that give him any more confidence for his next one? It's a very
I was thinking
slow.
the same thing. It's like there's no guarantee that he's going to go out there and make it. So you might be trying to give him confidence, but that doesn't guarantee that he's going to get the confidence that you're looking for. The Shark 83 in the YouTube chat says injured kickers.
That's not what he can control. Marty Biagi's not out there, taking a hammer to their groin.
And in the case of Burnett, he came to Notre Dame with an existing injury. I don't think he was fully open with Notre Dame about what was going on with him. And as I asked Marcus Freeman, it was one of the last two press conferences of the season. It was either last week or the week before about the kicking. I think it might have been. In any case, in regards to the kickers, he said that Jeter last year and Burnett this year, while they are both soft tissue injuries of the leg, they were not the same thing, So, and again, Burnett, it sounds like, came with him from North Carolina. So, like, I think that, it just happens to be, bad coincidence, I guess. I don't see any correlation between the two. And Jeter's got better once his chiropractor dad came into town and started giving him some treatments. So
maybe they need to hire him, dad, to come back and work on the current kickers.
Well, but they're different things. So I don't know. I don't know if it would help or not. Biagi did pull a rabbit out of his hat, though, with that fake punt, man. It went 84 yards for a touchdown, the pass from Josh Burnham to Luke Talich. And after the Stanford game, Marcus Freeman talked about that fake punt.
It's something we've been working on for a couple of weeks, and we knew if we got a certain look, we would check to it, and we got the look that we wanted, and we checked to it, and we executed. And credit to Coach Biagi and the special teams unit and the punt unit for their practice. They've been practicing that for quite a while, and they executed just like they practiced it, really flawlessly. And so proud of the way they executed, and it really helped that game. Kind of, I think it got to 21-0 after that, right? And so it really kind of put this game into a position that I think we knew we were pretty much in the driver's seat.
Got a little juice out of that, baby. And that was a big Shamrock Up for me, that fake punt. It's always fun when you see those fakes, especially when they work, because it's like, no matter when, like they come out of nowhere. But how shocked were you to see a fake punt from their own 16-yard line?
Yeah, I was absolutely shocked. I just remember looking over at Naomi and I was like, did that just happen? Because it was already 14.
I'm not even watching this game. What are you talking about?
It was already 14-0, and the next thing I know, I was like, oh, they just faked a punt and went 87
4
yards,
yards. Yeah.
84 yards and scored a touchdown. I'm actually going to, you said this was a big Shamrock up for you. This is what I was saving. This is kind of a Shamrock down for me.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, go on. Let's hear it.
You're just putting it back on the map that you run fake punts. Like, I felt like Notre Dame was pretty dormant. Like, why not save that? They just talked about how they've been practicing it for weeks. Why not save that against freaking Oklahoma or Ole Miss or, potentially someone that they're playing in the college football playoff? I think now everyone's going to, if you study the tape on Notre Dame, this is going to come up on special teams. I don't know if it would have come up before, but now it's definitely coming up. And it's a thing that teams are going to be alerting and looking out for. So it was sweet. Don't get me wrong. It put the nail in the coffin. It really drove home the message that we're here and we're here to dominate you. But at the same time, I was just like, man, you're just kind of you're ratting yourself out here a little bit.
But you know how this stuff is with special teams. As Marcus Freeman said in that cut, how you design the fake or which fake you use is still dependent upon what kind of look you get from the punt block team or, like the field goal block unit, those kind of things. Like, it is still dependent on that. So, like, obviously Marty Biaggi has a pretty deep bag that he's able to go to with these different fakes. And like you saw it, the way Stanford lined up, they brought that edge off, and Luke Talich just basically said, okay, great. You go to the backfield. All I'm
like chip blocked him.
Yeah, I'm just going to take a couple steps. And then I will say, when I saw number 40, instead of thinking of Josh Burnham, my first thought was, who's the walk-on that wears number 40? I wasn't thinking about Josh Burnham throwing a touchdown pass, but it's also like, oh yeah, he played some quarterback in high school, and he didn't have to do much. He basically just kind of flipped it out there, and then Talich makes the catch, and it's like, man, he's got some open grass in front of him. And then all of a sudden, that deep man tried to come up and get in the way a little bit, and he found that sideline and showed off a little of that speed. I'm not as concerned about you because again, it's still about the look that the unit that you're facing on that particular day is going to give you that determines, what kind of fake you're going to run. I think everyone has to be on alert. And now you've got, different guys with different personnel, like you've seen Buckner involved, you've seen Love involved, you've seen now Burnham and Talich, like who would have ever picked that Josh Burnham was going to throw an 84-yard touchdown pass to Luke Talich. So I don't have a problem with it. It's a big up for me, but I guess I can see your point of view. You're worried about spoiling too many fakes with the playoffs coming up. I just think it puts everybody on alert. It's like, you better be ready because we don't care. We're at our own freaking 16-yard line and we're going to call this thing. I think I think it's great.
No, it's as a fan, don't get me wrong. I was playing a little bit of devil's advocate, but at the same time, it's still real to me. But shout out to Talich, 2 back-to-back games with a special teams touchdown.
Yeah, no kidding. I didn't even think about that. That's true. And on the punt block the week before, so again, like if we're talking about Marty Biaggi, I think overall the Shamrock is up for him. And, there's not too many guys on the coaching staff that it's going to be down for. And coming out of the Stanford game, I don't have any specific downs that I've got. That's a good point though, as well. Joe from the YouTube chat shows the confidence in the defense when you're going to do it from your own 16.
I just don't know how we can't be so Shamrock up on Biaggi, because in the Kelly era, when did freaking special teams contribute this many game-changing plays, points, change of momentum? I mean, they've scored on fake punts, they've scored on block punts, they've scored on kick returns. They've, I didn't even talk about Jadarian Price's kick returns. That falls into special teams. Like, they have created so many extra points and extra possessions and that sort of thing by how good Marty Biaggi's been.
Good point by Ken as well in the YouTube chat. Slows down future punt rushes as well. Yeah, like you're putting teams on alert, and they're not going to be as apt to come after it when you know that a fake can come at any time. But you're absolutely right about Brian Kelly. Like, he just wanted special teams not to be a liability. He was completely happy with being a net neutral proposition.
On all special teams. He just wanted to get away with no penalties and no turnovers.
Just catch the ball, never make a return. Like ball security is obviously a big deal for any punt return unit, but you can't coach in fear like that. And I think that's
the biggest difference. Marcus Freeman never coaches in fear.
Right. Exactly. They're very aggressive in everything they do. And it's just, like it's that much makes it that much more fun to watch, I think, at the end of the day. So Aneyas Williams, I think we can all agree that Aneyas Williams was a big shamrock up for Saturday's game. He ended up leading the average with 83 yards on 10 carries, pair of touchdowns. Here is Marcus Freeman on Aneyas Williams, his number 3 running back.
Yeah, I mean, it's like every time he goes in the game, he's scoring touchdowns, man. And he's a guy that's an example of working with what he has, right? Like, you hear me often say, work while you wait. Like, he had a small role, right? Maybe it was a kick returner, and hey, if you're the third back, if we get to that point, but he practices and works and embraces his role. Then all of a sudden, when he gets a bigger one, he maximizes it. And so that doesn't happen by chance. It's because he works his tail off and is preparing for that opportunity, even though he don't know when it's going to present itself.
Is there a bigger shamrock up this week than Aneyas Williams?
No, there isn't, because Notre Dame's obvious game plan was run the ball and get the heck out of there as quickly as possible. And then when Jeremiyah Love gets, bruised up, now you got Jadarian Price, who's going to be your lead back, majority of the first half. And then now Aneyas Williams becomes a Jadarian Price because Jadarian Price took on the full number 1 load of Jeremiyah Love. And then by the time the second half comes, Aneyas Williams is your full-on guy. So he really shouldered the load for Notre Dame to kind of get in and out of there offensively, but also really showcase his talents. And I think that's the thing that I have been so impressed with Marcus Freeman is it doesn't matter. I feel like 1 through 3, Notre Dame can compete with you. If someone goes down at the 1 position, it's no longer the end of the world, because number 2 has just as much talent. He might not just he might just be a little bit off from number 1. There's just not that huge drop off between 1 and 2 anymore. And I think that's great. And I think that's, again, kind of been the separating factor for Notre Dame. Notre Dame could have played their entire second string and beat Stanford.
Yeah. And that wheel route catch that he made, it was basically, I won't say it was the exact same play, but it was like the same kind of catch that he made against Penn State, over the shoulder and looking back for it. Again, like, that is not an easy ball to find, especially like you're in a stadium you're not used to being in. The lights are on because it's dark outside and the whole thing. And he makes it look so easy. It was just, like the way he caught it anyway, exactly like Penn State. So huge shamrock up for him. Going back to the special teams, Bernie, 7 special teams touchdowns this year for Notre Dame. That's
one every 2 games, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Jeremiyah Love was asked about Aneyas Williams and his day after the game as well. Here's what Jeremiyah Love had to say about his teammate.
Aneyas practices hard every single day, and he makes sure that he is ready for his opportunity when it comes. And every time his opportunity comes, Aneyas is ready. That just goes to how we're trained, how we've got a great coach, and Coach Sider and Coach Free. And Coach Denbrock, calling great plays for us. But Aneyas is the type of guy who is always prepared, and you obviously see that when he goes out there and breaks off for touchdowns whenever he gets his opportunity. And I'm really proud of Aneyas. I kind of think of him as like my young guy. Even though I think we're the same age, but I love seeing Aneyas and all the other backs, perform the way that they want to, and they get some glory,
All right. So what do you think about Jeremiyah Love's response there about his teammate Aneyas Williams?
Yeah, it felt like a very professional response, and he kind of, before he said it at the end, I was thinking about, I was like, this just sounds like a big brother moment almost. Like, he feels like big brother and little brother. But I think the biggest thing is, if you ask Aneyas Williams, it's so easy to be prepared like that, or to, be ready when you have such great examples like Jeremiyah Love and Jadarian Price ahead of you, guys who are constantly working on their game. You hear Jeremiyah Love talk about all of his preparation and practice, and practicing his moves and how he wants to approach the game. Those younger guys catch on because they want to eventually be you or take your spot. And so Aneyas Williams shows a lot of patience, but at the same time, it just feels like a big brother moment because you can see that Jeremiyah Love is so excited to see, Aneyas Williams probably take that next step.
Well, that's what stood out to me because I listened to the whole, his whole, Q&A in his press conference, Jeremiyah Love's and Marcus Freeman's before him as well. But what stood out was, like, before that question about Aneyas Williams, Love was getting a lot of the, like, questions about the Heisman, make your pitch for the Heisman. We played it on yesterday's show, some of those different kind of things. And basically, like, when you hear Jeremiyah Love being asked to talk about himself, like a lot of people, but he's not overly comfortable doing that. But like that response that he just gave on Aneyas Williams was much more telling, and he was like much more, eager to talk about someone like Aneyas Williams than he is even about himself. So I think that's what stood out the most to me, hearing that Jeremiah saying that about Aneyas. I thought that was pretty cool. All right, it's Shamrock Up, Shamrock Down Day, our weekly stock check of Notre Dame football. We've got a couple more ups that we're going to hit before we close out this hour. A couple more comments from the YouTube. And don't forget, if you're driving around, listening in your car, you're listening to the podcast, the next day you can always watch the show live on either of the YouTube channels, the Irish Breakdown YouTube channel or the Sports Radio WSBT YouTube channel. And while you're there on the Sports Radio WSBT, give us a follow. We're inching closer to our goal of 500 subscribers on the Sports Radio WSBT channel. As we're still that one's still in its infancy. The Irish Breakdown channel has been around for a long time, and of course we appreciate all the people watching and listening and providing their input and all that kind of stuff in the YouTube chat. But again, like if you're driving in your car and you're listening on the radio and you're like, man, I'd like to get a question in, just go dial up one of those YouTube channels and you can throw your own question in to us either way. So you can do that. All right. More Shamrock Up, more Shamrock Down. Coming up next, Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Budweiser's weekday sports beat with IrishBreakdown.com continues. Glad to have you with us here today. We're doing a little Shamrock up, Shamrock down. We've got a little bit of time in this first hour to hit one or two more. How about Leonard Moore? I, for one, am glad that Stanford made the decision to target Leonard Moore I had to get the right fingers up, 7 times, because I don't think we get enough chances to talk about how good Leonard Moore is, because most teams aren't stupid enough to throw at Leonard Moore 7 times in a game. And he finished, of course, with an interception and 3 pass breakups as well. I don't know. It was a curious choice, I felt like, for Stanford.
Yeah, huge Shamrock up. It only allowed Leonard Moore to showcase, his skills. He is widely regarded as the best man corner in all of college football, and he showed you why with the pass breakups and the interception. I just don't know where anywhere in the game plan it said target number 15. Like why was he the most targeted guy, especially by the starting unit? So did they forget he was over there? Did they get the numbers confused? But I guarantee nowhere in the scouting report did it say, man, oh man, throw at number 15.
Yeah, exactly. Again, very, very curious that would be the guy that you would be locking in on as a Stanford quarterback. But it was a choice. And, again, it just allowed us to see Leonard more up close and personal with the plays that he made. And, that interception, he knew what was coming right away. He was just, he didn't have to do that much. He just did his job, and there he was. Well, I'm giving a Shamrock up to mental preparation, because Freeman was asked after beating Stanford about how he and his team have handled like the rooting on a week-to-week basis, like for and against other teams, as it pertains to the college football playoff rankings and where Notre Dame is, and, basically scoreboard watching and, and other kind of stuff, and avoiding the noise, if you will, during the week. And so here's how Marcus Freeman answered that.
I don't do those things, but maybe some other people in our program might, but it doesn't help us take advantage of the opportunity we have at hand. And that's what I kept trying to tell those guys. You have to value what you have. We have this opportunity right now. And it was this like this every week. If you don't value what you have, you'll lose it. You'll lose that opportunity. You won't maximize it. And so if you're not thinking about this opportunity you have, which we just had, then you're wasting this opportunity you have on things that don't matter. I mean, that you don't control. I'm not saying it don't matter, but you don't control. And so, I mean, it's so true to life. Like, if you don't focus on what you have and what you can control, you're not going to maximize that opportunity.
And I realize we hear some version of that from Marcus Freeman almost every week. We're only guaranteed 12 opportunities, and, all those different things, control what you can control. And again, it might sound cliche, but like when you listen to the players, they're talking about like hearing those kind of things. And I don't think that they would have the results that they have, especially 2 years in a row, winning 10 games straight, 2 years in a row with their backs to the wall to potentially get into the playoffs for the second straight year. I don't think that they have those kind of results if their attention wasn't completely on the task at hand week in and week out. Do you?
No, I don't. And I'm glad that you brought this up, because I think the mental preparation is honestly, one of the most impressive parts about Marcus Freeman, because I think if he can master, they're ready for the games, the big games. They're always ready for the big games. It's these Stanford, Northern Illinois, Marshalls that keep coming to haunt Marcus Freeman. If he can master this mental preparation of maximizing this opportunity, no matter the opponent's faceless, we just want to execute our best football and beat you, whether you're Ohio State or whether you're a crappy Stanford team. If he can master that part, Notre Dame is a very scary team at that point. And I think it's the hardest thing that he has left to do, and it's the thing that's been setting him back the most. And so as a fan, you like to see this season, their losses came very first 2 games of the season against top 12 teams, 2 top 12 teams, top 15 at the worst. But they didn't lose to those Northern Illinois or Marshalls this season. And not only did they not lose, but they resoundingly beat a lot of those teams. And that's something, too, that you don't see, I feel like, at Notre Dame is, 3-point games against MAC teams at home, against, like, Toledo's and Ball State's. Like, you didn't see any of that this year. They won the games they were supposed to, and they won them convincingly.
Right, exactly. And, again, like when you look at how the last weekend played out. Okay, Miami, this wasn't in the last weekend, but if you follow the trail, Miami lost to SMU during the season. One of the things held against Miami, right? Even though, yes, we know you may have heard they have the head-to-head win over Notre Dame, but Miami lost to both SMU and Louisville. SMU lost to Cal with an opportunity to get into the ACC championship game this weekend. They lost to Cal, who also lost to Stanford the week before, who, of course, Notre Dame smoked. Miami also lost to Louisville, who lost to both Cal and SMU. And again, follow them in that trail right now. So I'd say those teams found out, they found themselves focused on the wrong things at different points in the season. And, like Miami is where they are. Yes, they've got a head-to-head win over Notre Dame. Great. But you also have to account for the fact that you lost to two teams that are in your conference, and neither one of them made the conference championship game, even though both had opportunities at different points to play their way into that conference championship game. And like those have to be accounted for as well. I'm sorry, that's also part of your resume. It's not just who did you beat, it's also who did you lose to and how many times did you lose. And I think that like the focus is a big part of that.
You just brought up the nail in the coffin point to me. You're not only not playing in the ACC championship, you're not even the best team in your conference, but to couple that with the teams that you lost to aren't even playing in the conference championship either.
Right. It's
you're out, and the teams you lost to are out.
Yeah.
It's amazing that you think you did. Like, if you're that good, you would have won those games because those are crappy teams. And that's what Notre Dame took care of convincingly this year. Crappy teams.
Oh, 60-year-old Jeremy Griggs says, stop playing such a weak schedule. Join a conference. As if being in the Big Ten, ensures that anyone in the Big Ten is playing a great schedule. Like, have you seen who Indiana played to begin the season? Okay. Oh, man. Old Dominion. Whoo! There's a team that's really going to challenge you. Kennesaw State. Man. Indiana State. Okay. Oh, and then, of course, you get, other Big Ten greats like Michigan State, UCLA, Maryland, Wisconsin, Purdue. Man, being in a conference that really upped the level of difficulty for Indiana. Yeah. All right. Good to have you, Jeremy Griggs.
Kurt Signetti has not had an easier first 2 years. A guy who has really maximized on his situation. Hats off to him, but man, Indiana has not played anyone this season.
No. And, like when you look at, like the strength of schedule, Notre Dame right now in FPI comes in at number 3 in the FPI behind Ohio State and Indiana, and like when you look at, like, you can go right through the metrics and Notre Dame stacks up there with everybody. They might, like, the strength of schedule dipped a little bit this year because of some of the teams that they played, but they also played 5 teams from the ACC and they lost to one of them and they beat the rest of them. So I don't know what to tell you, man.
Well, you have to just tell them to Google.
For one thing, Jeremy, nobody made Texas A&M, Oklahoma. Nobody made them join the SEC. Nobody made any of the teams that are currently in the SEC stay in the SEC. Most of them are there right now because of the massive TV revenue that they're getting. So, like, you made your own bed. I don't feel sorry for anyone in the SEC because they've got to play a few tougher games. Yeah, There are tougher games there, but that's part of the deal. That's part of the trade-off that you made by taking those big TV checks for being there. I don't feel sorry for them. Nobody's forcing any of those teams in the SEC to be there. That's the choice they made. Notre Dame makes its choice to be independent because it serves Notre Dame the best. All those teams in the SEC made that choice because they feel like it serves them the best. And that might mean that it's going to cost you a playoff bid every now and then because there are a lot of good teams in the SEC. And it's not like that every year either. There are more quality teams in the SEC this year than there were last year even.
Yeah, I can't remember what schedule it is, but he might want to go look at the 27-28 schedule, very loaded schedule, a lot of teams on there. And, 5-6 teams might make it from the SEC this year. So I'd be willing to bet that Notre Dame could be in the top 4, 1 through 5 every season and get a playoff berth because, that's what the SEC wants. And let's be quite honest, the playoff format's going to expand so the SEC and Big Ten can get more schools in there.
All right, we got to take a break. We're behind as we get set for rapid fire. Got a lot coming up, including some comments from Steve Sarkisian and some more college football playoff talk and some Lane Kiffin talk and just whatever else that we can get to. Rapid fire, hour number 2. It's coming up. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Oh, yeah, it's hour number 2 of Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com, and that can mean only one thing, Jesse. Are you ready for some rapid fire?
Rapido, fire.
Here we go. All right, I'm going to start with a comment from Michael in the YouTube chat. He says, calling it now, the Irish come in at number 8 in the rankings tonight. Ole Miss drops to number 9. I will say that I was at least more open to the idea this could happen before the announcement today that Charlie Weiss Jr. is going to remain offensive coordinator at Ole Miss through the college football playoff run. We talked about that at the start of the show. So what do you think? Is Notre Dame going to stay at number 9? Do you see them moving up at all? Do you see Ole Miss falling? What do you think about all this with the selection show as we speak right now, less than an hour away, if it starts on time tonight, which it did not last week? There's no battle tonight before.
This is a loaded question. I think there's 2 big questions that happen in this ranking. What happens with A&M? How far did they fall? I think the biggest question is, do they stay in front of Oregon or fall behind Oregon? And then what happens to Ole Miss? Do they remain the same? Do they get penalized? I'm going to shake it up here a little bit. I think Texas A&M is going to be like 6. I think that Oregon will be 7. Or sorry, A&M will be 5. Oregon will be 6. Oklahoma will be 7. Bama will be 8. No, will be 9. Ole Miss will be behind them.
You think Bama's going to leapfrog everybody?
I think that the committee has backed themselves into a tough corner with Alabama because say Alabama loses the SEC championship and BYU wins, I think Bama would have to fall out. BYU would take their spot at 10, and then you'd have the 2 auto bids between the group of 5 and potentially the ACC or another group of 5 because the committee tries to say that, the championship games can't hurt you. But if BYU wins and Alabama loses, BYU has to take someone's spot. And so I think that they have to put them in front of Notre Dame because if Alabama loses, they can still stay in and BYU can get in as well. That's the conundrum I think the committee has put themselves in.
Man, you've got me confused with all these places that you're moving. I think A&M only falls to number 5. I don't think they fall that far. And so you're saying Texas Tech moves ahead of basically Georgia and Texas Tech move ahead. Actually, that would be 4 and 5 or 6. In either case, I don't think Alabama's moving past Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame has an excellent chance to move up 1 spot. And based on everything we've seen from this committee, they obviously value Notre Dame. And I think that having them at number 8 sets up for more insurance for ensuring that Notre Dame is going to get one of these at-large bids next week if there is any, tumult with what happens in those 2 conference championship games in the SEC with Alabama potentially winning and in the Big 12 with BYU potentially winning a rematch with Texas Tech. D-Rock Irish says an Oklahoma podcast last night said he thinks the Sooners stay put at number 8. Did say the Sooners struggling offensively and Notre Dame could jump them. And that's what I'm looking at. Like watching this Oklahoma team.
They make that rational decision.
Right. Like this is, I think, Notre Dame's best chance is to just move past Oklahoma 1 spot because of the fact that, like, if you look at Notre Dame, they are still in all 3 phases, offense, defense, special teams. They pop more than anybody. Like we talked in the first hour about the fact that Notre Dame has 7 special teams touchdowns this season. And you look at where they are, like in terms of being top 15 in both scoring offense and scoring defense. Oklahoma can't make that claim. And, like you look at some of the other metrics, Oklahoma's good in some metrics, but that offense really struggles. And that's where I could see maybe Notre Dame makes that move ahead. I don't think that Ole Miss is going to drop 2 spots. I could see them falling 1 spot, but I don't know that they fall 2 spots after losing Lane Kiffin, especially, since they are keeping Charlie Weiss intact. as the coordinator. But it is still a question as to whether or not, like Golding, the defensive coordinator, getting promoted, like what kind of impact that could have, because you're talking about an inexperienced head coach now being the head coach and leading a team into the college football playoffs. Sean says the committee is going to set it up Notre Dame versus Miami. I wouldn't mind seeing that at all. We talked about this last week. I would love to see a rematch in the first round of the playoffs between these two, with all the smoke and steam and everything else coming off. I would love to see it. I know Miami fans think that Notre Dame would be afraid of that. I think that Notre Dame would love to have that chance at a rematch against the Hurricanes in the playoffs.
So my biggest you touched on this a little bit. I'm trying not to be a homer about this, but I think that there is a serious case for Notre Dame to jump Oklahoma based off of Oklahoma played a 5-6 Auburn team that's fired their coach and bad. Notre Dame played a pretty equivalent 4-7 Stanford team who just hired their new head coach and had an interim head coach. Both games on the road. Oklahoma's playing LSU. I got Alabama and Auburn mixed up. But anyways, Oklahoma looks bad against a not great LSU team. Notre Dame took care of business. Their offense really struggled. And at this point in the season, if we're going, kind of off this eyeball test, I think it would make sense that Notre Dame could potentially jump Oklahoma. And that would be huge because that means Notre Dame would host that game.
Right. Exactly.
And no longer have to be on the road.
It's the 8th spot you're hosting. I do think it's interesting. This just crossed my mind, the fact that, like we talked about, how, like if you lose to a team that fired its head coach during the season, kind of hard to have any sympathy for you. Notre Dame only played one team this year that fired its coach during the season, and that, of course, was Sam Pittman at Arkansas. And that is still such a unique one, and I know everyone likes to rip Notre Dame for, oh, it's all great. You played the worst team in the SEC, and you smoked them. Well, look at the results that Arkansas had. Even though they fired their coach, they continued to play very well with Petrino as head coach offensively. And they played all those games where they lost their SEC games. This was going into last week by a combined, I think it was 40 points. Notre Dame beat them by 43. They were still a really good offense. And Notre Dame's defense, at a time that the defense was still struggling, held Arkansas to 13 points. That's the least points that Arkansas has scored in a game all season. So yeah, they're bad because they were horrible defensively, but they were still a really good offensive team, and they played with basically everybody in the SEC this season. So, of course, everyone's taking their shots at Notre Dame these days as they jockey for their college football playoff inclusions and rankings, and Steve Sarkisian, the Texas head coach, no different. Here is his quote about Notre Dame after his team's win over Texas A&M over the weekend. Quote, "This whole idea that, well, you lost to Florida. Well, the team that played for the national championship last year lost to Northern Illinois at home. So you're going to punish us, and you don't want to punish them, but they were good enough to play for a national title. So I have no doubt in my mind that the team we have in the locker room downstairs is a playoff football team and worthy of an opportunity to play for a national championship." End quote. That from Steve Sarkisian, Jesse, is blank.
Is a bunch of hot garbage because Notre Dame had one loss to a team the whole season that was Northern Illinois. Texas had 3 losses, and one of them included a really bad Florida team. So comparing one loss with that is in itself a really bad loss compared to 3 losses and one of them is really bad. There's just no comparison. And I feel like that's where I'm just annoyed is there's like better examples out there. Like why is Notre Dame always the comparison or the punching bag, or everyone always has something to say about their position not being fair as it relates to Notre Dame. And I'm just so tired of it.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you can lose to Ohio State and still get into the playoff if you don't also lose to Florida. You can lose to both Ohio State and Florida if you don't also lose to Georgia. Like you lost 3 games. That's part of it. And the fact that Florida is one of those losses. It's not just that you lost to Florida. It's not just that you lost to Ohio State. So don't cry about playing a great, out of conference opponent. You lost 3 games, and that's where you are. And one of those losses is a bad loss to Florida. And like you said, like comparing that to Notre Dame last year is just ludicrous because that was Notre Dame's only loss in the regular season. And on top of that, Notre Dame had just come off a big road win over Texas A&M to open the season, one of 4 ranked teams that they beat last year. You can't compare one loss by Notre Dame, as bad as it was, to 3 losses that you have, like 2 of them to good teams and 1 of them to a bad team. If you had beaten Florida and your only losses were to Ohio State and Georgia, like, you're making things a heck of a lot more difficult for the College Football Playoff Committee right now, because they would be in serious consideration. And then that would be even tougher on the Miamis and BYUs of the world. So you just can't compare 3 losses to 1 loss by Notre Dame, as bad as it is. You just can't. You don't lose to Florida, you're probably in the playoffs.
Well, you can also couple that with they had to beat a bad Kentucky and Mississippi State team in overtime. Both of those games they had to win in overtime. And so when you look at Texas, you have to legitimately question their consistency of play. Yeah, some weeks, sure, you can beat Texas A&M, but other weeks you're losing to Florida. You're going to overtime with a bad Kentucky team. You're going to overtime with a bad Mississippi State team. What consistency are you proving to the playoff committee that if they let you into the playoff, you're just not going to get steamrolled by one of these better teams because you didn't want to show up and play Texas football that day?
Correct. And I'm looking, Sean in the YouTube chat just asked if any of the SEC teams beat up on Arkansas the way Notre Dame did. The answer is no. And remember, Notre Dame beat Arkansas 56-13. That was one of 2 teams, Texas being the other, that put up 50-plus points. Those are the only 2 teams that put up 50-plus against Arkansas, Notre Dame and Texas. But Texas also gave up 37 points to Arkansas compared to 13 by Notre Dame. Texas won by 15 points. That was, in conference play, that was the most lopsided loss that Arkansas had, was 52-37 to Texas. They lost by 2 touchdowns to Missouri, 31-17 to close the season. So the answer is no. Nobody in the SEC beat up on Arkansas like Notre Dame beat up on Arkansas this year. So, again, it's like talking about how great all these SEC teams are, and there's some good teams in the SEC, but Notre Dame beat Arkansas more handily than any team in the SEC. They actually played very close with SEC competition, including some good teams this year. Fill in the blank. It's blank that the ACC network is scheduled to re-air the Notre Dame-Miami game 4 times this Thursday and another 4 times this Friday.
It's a huge waste of television time. No, seriously, because the committee rankings come out tonight, and there's nothing that Notre Dame or Miami can do between now and the final rankings that would jockey Miami ahead of Notre Dame. It's so ridiculous. They're wasting their own time, hoping to potentially change the minds. I don't know, like prove this point of, if we air it on TV, more people will believe us or something. I'm so fed up with the ACC and how they've positioned themselves in this whole matter, just kind of completely disregarding Notre Dame. Like Notre Dame has done nothing for the ACC. So again, huge waste of time. The rankings come out tonight. That airs Thursday and Friday, and it's not like you would hope that they would have aired it before the rankings, because then it's like, maybe they're trying to, like when it's voting season, people just throw out all these random ads. Like, if we throw this out there enough, people will watch it and latch on and think Miami is better. But it's just, it has nothing to do with the rankings that are about to come out tonight.
Yeah, I think it is completely petulant. But, at least the ACC is putting its highest profile entity on its own TV network. Might as well have Notre Dame on there as much as possible. And good for Notre Dame as well, and the 12 people who will be watching the ACC network to see CJ Carr lead a pair of double-digit comebacks in the second half on the road in his first career start. think about that. Even though Notre Dame ultimately lost the game on a field goal with less than a minute to play, C.J. Carr in his first career start led Notre Dame back from double-digit deficits twice in the second half. So that'll be on there as well, unless they edit it so much that they're not even going to include that stuff in there. But it is amazing considering that the ACC network wouldn't even exist if not for Notre Dame's partial affiliation with the ACC, and not to mention, the whole ESPN contract. I don't think they wouldn't be getting as much. The value of that ESPN ACC contract wouldn't be as much if Notre Dame was not included. So no, Notre Dame might not be a full-time member of your conference, but they're still propping you up. And to try to do this and throw it in their face, and as Salty says, are they trying to drive Notre Dame out of ACC football? I mean, this is a really interesting position that the ACC is taking on this thing. And I realize they want to support their own team, but they're also disregarding what we've talked about from the very beginning. Like, it's not just a head-to-head. It is also who your losses are to. And they have 2 losses to 4-loss unranked teams that didn't even make the conference championship game in their own conference that Miami plays in. How can that be forgiven? How can that be overlooked by the College Football Playoff Committee? It can't, and it hasn't been. And they are watching the way these two teams are playing on the field right now. Like, Miami is playing now closer to what Notre Dame has been playing for the majority of the season, with the exception of those.
Because it lit a fire under them.
Yeah, because they found themselves backed into a corner because they lost to 2 teams they shouldn't have lost to.
Too late in the season.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what happens when you lose games in October. Sorry. All right, we'll take a break. When we come back, more rapid fire. We've got Lane Kiffin conversation and more, and some more on this Miami thing as well. Coming up, Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. We continue Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com along with Jesse Stiers. I'm Sean Stiers. We're in the middle of rapid fire right now as we continue. Let me just ask you this one, following up on some of this Miami conversation. Scale of 1 to 10. You're going to give me two different numbers here. First, how would you rank what you thought about the Notre Dame-Miami rivalry going into the season versus how would you rank it right now? Like the intensity, 10 being the most intense, 1 being not much at all.
I think at the beginning of the season, I would have put it at a 5 out of 10. I think there was definitely some history there, but it was more so kind of in the past, nothing of the current or stuff that I've really been around to witness. So I was kind of on the fence, like, oh yeah, this is a rival, but it feels like one of those old rivals, a rival that's kind of lingered around. But now, I think I would put it at a solid 7. It's definitely climbed a little bit just because of how much hate that Miami fans have thrown on the gasoline or onto the fire here. And I think Notre Dame on the other side of it just wants to kind of strap up and play again and really take it to Miami. So I think that there would be a lot of, because of all the stuff that Miami has done in the last month or so, I think that it would turn nasty because Notre Dame fans would want to be in your face if I told you so, prove it type stuff. And of course, Miami, if they came out on top, would be like, listen, this is what we were telling you the whole time. So that's where I'm at. I don't think it's this crazy intense burning thing quite yet. I think we're on our way there, especially
I think
if they play again.
Well, yeah, I mean, especially like the stuff coming from the other side, I would probably put it a little bit higher than you right now. I'd put it at least an 8, 8.5. I think like it has ratcheted up quite a bit coming into the season. I honestly would have put it at a 2 or a 3, and it's because of the stuff we talked about coming into the season. Even though there's history there, like the height of it was still late 80s and early 90s, and then it got so bitter that they just ended it, and they've barely played for the better part of the last 35 or so years. And then this happens, and it has become the most contentious single game, maybe other than, the 1988 game at Notre Dame Stadium, where all the Miami fans, so many of them are still peeved about Catholics versus convicts. And then, the calls that they shot, the Cleveland Gary play and all that stuff at the goal line and everything else. Like, this has become the most contentious thing, this back and forth, most of it coming from Miami fans. There's a lot of venom there. So I'd put it pretty high now. And I still say it was just not that much coming into the season. But hey, at the very least, unless the ACC helps Miami pull out of another game against Notre Dame, we've got Miami coming to Notre Dame Stadium next year. So we've got that to look forward to in what has become a renewed rivalry. Okay, I'm going to skip forward to make sure that we get to the Lane Kiffin stuff before we get to anything else, because there is a lot of meat on the bone with Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss. And again, Lane announced today, and Ole Miss verified it, that Charlie Weiss Jr. is going to remain the Ole Miss offensive coordinator throughout Ole Miss's playoff run. And with the rankings coming out tonight, we'll see what impact that has. But Lane Kiffin had his introductory press conference at LSU yesterday, and here are a couple things that he talked about in said press conference.
So the last 48 hours, in a lot of ways, sucked. It's the only way I can describe it. It sucked for a lot of people. And there was no way to possibly do it, in my opinion, any better than we did from a timing standpoint, because it's a bad scheduling system of how it's set up. And eventually, hopefully, it gets like the NFL, where you can't do that in the season and don't have to make those decisions. I'm never going to make a decision on money. And I'm telling you right now, I don't know what my contract is here. That's not very financially responsible, okay? I'm sure it's really good, okay? I don't know what it is, nor did I know at the other places what the numbers were. Because I said in the beginning, I told Jimmy Sexton, don't tell me the numbers, okay? I want to make a decision that has nothing to do with money for me. Now, tell me the numbers in the plan for what the money is for the players, because that's everything in that area to me.
Okay, so comments on a couple of different things there. And Jimmy Sexton, just to explain for anybody who doesn't know, Jimmy Sexton is from the agency CAA, and he is Lane Kiffin's agent. He represents a lot of different coaches and media personalities, including Nick Saban, as one of the examples. My first question, Jesse, do you buy or sell that Lane Kiffin does not know the financials of his new contract at LSU?
I sell that he doesn't know the overall amount. I buy that he probably doesn't know the intricate details and the incentives and kickbacks and this and that. And I also buy that he didn't take the job for the money. I think that his little speech he did there was maybe a little bit, drawn out and not probably 100% true. But I do believe at the end of the day, he didn't take it solely because he was getting paid more money. I think he could recruit better, and I think he thinks it's a better place to coach football.
I mean, it's eerily similar to the same things Brian Kelly was saying. Now, maybe we'll find out here within 3 years who the better coach is between Lane Kiffin and Brian Kelly. When we see what Kiffin does down there at LSU, but so many of the things have just been the same as Brian Kelly. He thought he was going to go there and it was going to be easier to recruit and compete for national championships and the whole thing. I completely sell the fact that Lane Kiffin has no clue what his contract is. Now, he might not have focused on that as his main reason. I do agree with what he's saying, and you and I were talking about this over the weekend. The money that'll be invested into the players, I think that
his roster.
I think that, like, when you compare Ole Miss to LSU, there is going to be a bigger investment on the LSU side coming from that. Now, that's obviously one of the reasons that Brian Kelly had to be shown the door, because there was a bigger investment there and he wasn't able to do anything with it. So, I'll buy that, but I don't buy that Lane Kiffin has no clue what his freaking contract is. Again, it might not have been the focus, but he knows he's going to get paid a pretty nice check every week or every month when it comes through.
Oh yeah, he's definitely getting some good money. And I think you brought up something interesting there about Brian Kelly. I don't think he necessarily got fired because of his ultimate record. Like, they were 7-4, potentially could have, went 8-4 or maybe even 9-3 to end the season with Brian Kelly. I think he got let go because he simply didn't invest into coaching in the program for how much money was like you just said, going into the roster and to the head coach position. And so I don't think that that's going to be Lane Kiffin. I think Lane Kiffin is someone who's fully going to invest, into the what the role is, and there's not going to be so many rumors that he's just golfing every other day.
I'm going to save that here for just a second. So what about the other part? Is the messaging that has been driven home that you heard Lane Kiffin talk about there? It's the calendar. It's the calendar's fault. Nick Saban was saying it on game day over the weekend. All these other talking heads, Dan Orlovsky. It's very curious to me that on the whole college game day set, the only guy who sits at that desk that is not represented by the same agency Lane Kiffin is represented by is Pat McAfee. Everyone else is a CAA client. Dan Orlovsky, who has also been delivering the same messaging on ESPN over the last couple of days, is a CAA client. Pat McAfee is the only one not a CAA client because he doesn't have an agent. He's one of the few guys who represents himself. All these other guys, Reese Davis included, Desmond Howard, Kirk Herbstreit, Nick Saban, on down to Dan Orlovsky, also on ESPN, and a lot of others, they're all represented by the same agency that Lane Kiffin is represented by. And they're all delivering the same message about it's the calendar's fault. It's not Lane Kiffin's fault. There's nothing he can do about it. You got to change the calendar. You got to change the college football calendar. What do you think about that argument?
Hey, I mean, I think there's a good amount of validity to it at the end of the day, because when is Lane Kiffin supposed to make this decision? When the season's over and it's too late? Like, you can't be asked to leave.
Yeah, but the calendar is what the calendar is. No one's making him make this move. I mean, there's no guarantee that he's going to go to LSU and even be in the playoffs again. You're coaching a team that's going to be in the playoffs, and you decide to pull up.
Yeah, but it's a lose no matter what you do. If you stay, you lose out on a potential career-changing opportunity at a program like LSU. And if you leave, everyone hates you because you left, because you have a team that's in the playoff that can win a national championship, but you're going on to a historically better program that is going to give you more resources to help you be a better coach. Like, if you have to
already in the playoffs with Ole Miss, and now you're going to miss out on a chance.
Yeah, but he's thinking down the road. Ole Miss isn't going to be this good for this long,
But they are right now. They're in the playoffs now for the first time ever.
I just think it's hard to ask someone to make this big of a career decision on the date that he was asked to do it.
How are you going to change the calendar, though? You have a semester system in college athletics. You have the holidays in college.
Start these games earlier.
That's literally the only way to do it. The only way to change the calendar is to start the season in early August instead of September. That's the only way to change it. Is you've got it literally. You're going to have to start the football season a month earlier. That's the only way to do it.
I think you could lop off conference championships, and you could also push the regular season up as well. I think there's things that can be done, but yeah, I mean, because of what you said, the semester system and when transfers have to be enrolled and be official students so they can participate in the next season, that's definitely there. And so how are you going to, and the thing is if you expand the playoff, this only gets worse.
Exactly. You expand the playoff, then you've got to have another week, to play more games that have to be added in. So again, the only way to change the calendar is to start the season a month earlier. That's the only way it's going to be done. And, whether or not that you could get the presidents of the universities to go for that, that's a pretty big question, because you would obviously be starting seasons before school even begins, so like your student sections and bands and everything else, they're not even on campus yet by the time you would have to start the season. So I don't know. Literally, I'm just tired of hearing this argument, because nobody held a gun to Lane Kiffin's head and said you have to take the LSU job and literally leave your college football playoff team high and dry in the process. So he can say what he wants. So the last part of this is Kiffin obviously wanted to coach the Rebels through the playoffs even after taking the job, but Ole Miss athletic director Keith Carter said, "No way. Are you in or out?" telling Kiffin that he can't still coach at Ole Miss after taking the new job. And, with today's developments as well, that they're letting Charlie Weiss Jr. stay on as offensive coordinator, you can kind of include that in there if you want.
Yeah, I think this is, again, a really tough question, because I see both sides. On one side, if you're the athletic director, and maybe LSU is a big part of this, like what if he was leaving to go to a Big Ten school or obviously not someone within the SEC and one of your, direct rivals. I get why you would say no. But then at the same time, I get why you would also say yes, and potentially want to see, your program win a national championship. And so it's really hard. I think, again, there's really no right answer, because I think you're going to get criticized on either way. Me personally, I would have said, Lane Kiffin, you've made your decision. You can no longer coach here. But I do think it's suspicious that he's allowing Charlie Weiss Jr. to come back, especially if it benefits them staying in, the college football playoff and still holding on to their at-large bid. I think that's a bit hypocritical to say, oh, but you know what? Actually, we'll send the plane for Charlie Weiss Jr. He can come back.
Other guys. Yeah, we're willing to take other guys on the staff who are going to be leaving. I mean, it's obviously different with Lane Kiffin because he is the head coach, and him diverting his attention between the two places. I think that Weiss can stay at Ole Miss and he's obviously not going to have to worry about the same things that Kiffin does in terms of recruiting, because you do have signing day coming up tomorrow. Like, you want your new head coach to be part of that, even though he didn't recruit any of those guys. You still need him to be there, and you want his attention solely on what it's supposed to be on. And from the Ole Miss perspective, look, you're going to a rival. You're either Ole Miss or you're not. So I completely get that. Like, keeping the assistants on, I do think it's a little different just because of the kind of responsibilities they have and everything else, even though from the Ole Miss perspective, it's still like they want to save themselves as much as possible.
Yeah, but in the grand scheme of things, Charlie Weiss Jr. is the second most important guy.
Sure.
Like, I guarantee if Kiffin didn't take him, there might have been serious conversations about Weiss Jr. becoming the head coach.
Right.
And is that, and I want to clarify because there's been a lot of stuff going on, recently. Is Golden the official head
Yes.
coach? He's not the interim head coach. He is the head coach.
He is the head coach now. It's I was about to say exactly the same as Marcus Freeman, but Freeman was obviously an interim before he became the head coach. But they fully promoted Golding to become the Ole Miss head coach. He is the guy going forward from this point and into the future. And from what I understand, just like Marcus Freeman, Golding, in terms of his involvement and importance at Ole Miss, in terms of the recruiting, very similar to the kind of importance that Marcus Freeman had, when he was defensive coordinator and obviously continues now as head coach, but very similar impact on recruiting that Golding has, parallel to the kind of impact that Marcus Freeman had.
So that's what was taking so long, is Ole Miss was just trying to get everything else sorted out.
Yeah. NH says, why aren't they going after Ole Miss, especially after what happened to FSU 2 years ago? Well, we'll find out tonight.
We don't know a definite answer. The thing is, though, is you're not losing an actual player. I think a player that is of the caliber, especially the quarterback position, is way more dramatic than losing a head coach.
Right. Exactly. But I do still think there's going to be some impact losing a guy like Lane Kiffin with his experience as a head coach and promoting what they obviously think is a very qualified and competent defensive coordinator to be head coach, but he's still just been a coordinator. And now the first game that he coaches is going to be a college football playoff game. So there's a big question as to how Golding is going to respond in that kind of situation. Very much higher pressure type situation for your first time being a head coach.
Yeah, I said it, I think, earlier in the show. It's all fun and games until you got the headset on.
Now you're the man. That's
you're
right.
in the high. It's not, you're not playing freaking Old Dominion or Kennesaw State. You're playing the most important game of the year, probably against your toughest opponent all year, and now you are making the decisions in the moment.
Yep.
It's a hard spot to be in.
Moving 3 feet to the right or the left to become that guy, the head coach. There's a big difference in the kind of decisions that you have to make in 30-second intervals when it comes to being the head coach, as opposed to just being an offensive or defensive coordinator. It's a lot different. And I think that can potentially have a big impact for Ole Miss. And again, it's going to be really interesting to see how the committee handles that when these latest rankings.
He has zero head coaching experience prior.
Exactly. That is right. Take our last time out and then back to wrap up rapid fire. Kalani Sitake, BYU, making an interesting decision today. We'll talk about that next. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Winding down Budweiser's weekday sports beat and rapid fire. We got a few minutes to go here before we end things tonight, along with Jesse Stiers. I'm Sean Stiers. So interesting news out of both BYU and State College today. Penn State, of course, fired James Franklin because, they thought that they were going to another level. But BYU head coach Kalani Sitake, who had emerged over the last few days, according to Pete Thamel of ESPN, the BYU head coach has started informing people that he is staying at BYU. He is not going to take the Penn State job. Well, BYU was able to up the ante to keep Kalani Sitake around, apparently because the CEO of Crumble Cookies outbid Penn State's boosters to keep Sitake in Provo.
Really?
Cookies. Are you a Crumble Cookie fan, first of all?
They are way too sweet. I can have them every now and then, but they are very sweet. That is I want to say he's like a young guy too.
The Crumble Cookie guy?
Yeah, I'm trying to look up his age real quick. Oh man. Why doesn't it say this guy's age anywhere? I thought it was like a 20, 30-year-old something guy, but I think that's hilarious. I think that Penn State just continues to just swing and miss, and they were the first one up to the plate. They were the first one in the batter's box, and It's almost like you weren't going to get much better than a guy who was averaging 10 wins a season at Penn State. Just a guess, though. And now he's probably going to go on to Virginia Tech and put them in a better situation than what Penn State will be in over the next 4 years.
Exactly. Like, if you're Penn State, who are you even going after now? Like, all the names that were like the obvious ones, Clark Lee has signed an extension. Matt Rule has signed an extension to stay around. Obviously, Kurt Cignetti was the first one to parlay it into a big extension and a new contract.
Have you heard the rumors of Kalen DeBoer?
I've heard some of that, like where that goes.
Why would he want to go there? I don't get that.
Maybe it's because he's got those Bama people breathing down his neck and he's found out, like just what the expectations are when you follow a legend like Nick Saban. What happens if they don't get into the playoffs this year? They're in good shape to get in right now. And obviously if they win the SEC championship game, they're in, but
Brian Kelly's the answer, but
that's what they're down to right now in terms of like guys who make sense. Brian Kelly.
Freaking Michigan State got Fitzgerald.
Yeah, that's right. Michigan State got Pat Fitzgerald, but there were even some questions about Fitzgerald apparently at Michigan State because he'd been out of the game for 3 years already. And the game has changed a lot in 3 years in terms of NIL and, transfer portal and everything else. Like 3 years seems like a million years ago at this point.
What about Brian Dable? What if he leaves the NFL and goes to Penn State?
Could see it. He coached for Ant VR, brought that up as well in the YouTube chat. He obviously has at least some college experience with Nick Saban down there at Alabama. That'd be an interesting one. Like if O'Brien was doing any better at Boston College, Penn State might just have him come back at this point. So
they're gonna. What I think they need to do is do their kind of homework on a Kurt Cignetti type of guy. Maybe a guy who's been around as a coordinator.
Well, all the up and comers from like the group of fives, they've already gotten the big promotions.
Summerall is gone.
Yeah, Summerall and Goldish and all these other guys.
What about our guy at KU? We were talking about him on Friday.
I think that
Lance Leopold,
some sense. Like, I don't know if Penn State would think that that's a big enough move for them, but for Leopold to even have KU in bowls and in bowl contention in the short time that he's been there after they were one of the worst programs in college football before he got there, I think you could do a heck of a lot worse. All right, we're going to have to wrap it up with that. Great stuff as always, Jess. Had fun talking with you tonight. We've got Wake Up the Echoes coming up next. Notre Dame men's basketball coming up at 9 o'clock tonight as well. We'll talk to you later. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat, IrishBreakdown.com.